Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Your organisation runs training courses for your staff and customers. Only problem is, it's time-consuming, inconvenient and costly. Take a leaf out of our book. The School of Hard Knock Knocks uses the online training platform by YZ, and our team and customers love it. It's simple to use, supports every media format, audio, video, text, and looks great on desktops, tablets and mobiles. And for a limited time, quote SHKK when you arrange a demo and get 10% off your first year's plan. YZ helps us deliver comedy courses around the world. Imagine what it could do for your organisation. YZ, that's WYZED.com. YZ, online learning made simple.
You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Steve Davis.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
In comedy, timing is everything. But when you're a radio host, you manage time like a fine art. So says Sydney-based comedian Simon Kennedy, a former radio host and 20-year veteran of stand-up comedy. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast episode, host Steve Davis talks to comedian Simon Kennedy about emceeing comedy, cancel culture, the green room hypocrisy, empathy, and sadly his mum's passing in the September 11 attacks. Simon also opens up about his own comedy career, his love of competition in comedy, and adapting to COVID-19 with pantless Zoom comedy. Yeah, for Simon, constraint really is the mother of invention. And if you're enjoying this School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast episode, then be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. And now here he is, comedian Simon Kennedy.
Seriously, the SBS voiceover guy tells you it's going to be good. You know the warning guy, and he does a little warning, and it sounds like this, like the following program is rated M. It contains coarse language, nudity, violence and sex scenes. SBS recommends viewing by mature audiences. What is with that guy? And thank you. Please, don't stop. That's good. What's with the voice of that guy? It sounds like, they say it's a warning, it's a recommendation, I'm telling you right now. You go, I'm watching it. I'm watching that. Or, yes. I love it, but one thing that is a little disappointing about the whole thing is that you're sitting up all night for that nudity, and you go, what? That one nipple? Thanks, SBS voiceover guy. So I'm putting it out there to him, a bit of advice for him. Just tell us exactly what's going on. We'll all know if we should head off to bed or not. Just hit me with a bit of... The following program is rated M. It contains the F word, the C word, a pair of tits, full frontal nudity, and some great lesbian action. But that all happens around 20 minutes into the film, so you've got plenty of time to make a cup of tea and grab a box of tissues. SBS recommends viewing by dirty old men. Thank you very much.
Simon Kennedy, welcome to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Mate, thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure,
Well, I hope you have the same sentiment at the end of this chat.
So do I. I'm not predicting, anything nasty, so don't let me down.
I'll do my best. Now, we actually have one thing in common. There's not much, but there's one thing. You're a former radio host. I began my career in radio. You obviously went a few rungs higher up there at Nova in Sydney. Tell me, is there something from the discipline of timing to news from radio that makes timing more of an innate skill when you're in the comedy world?
That's a great question, actually. No one's ever asked me. No one's ever asked me about the relationship between radio and stage before, and I've got to say, timing for me. I mean, as I say, comedy timing is everything. But for me, timing is super important. I'm vigilantly on time for anything. It is very rare for me to be running late. I'm always early. And I'm also really conscious of stage time. And I'm not sure if that comes from my radio background, where it is absolutely crucial, especially in your early stages, to make sure that you time up to the hour so that the news runs right on time. And I think that is part of it, because I think that you're always being watched by the powers that be to see if you do that well. But I think also as a courtesy, I think for me it's courtesy, the timing, rather than something that's sort of built into me through radio. I think it's more of a symptom of being a comedian standing at the back of the room waiting to go on, and the MC decides to run for 40 minutes up front. I think, and for me that is like, what? This is not your show. What the hell are you doing? I hate that so much. It's so selfish. So I try to avoid it at all costs.
Hey, look, look, that's a really important insight too, because you've mentioned courtesy, the courtesy factor of it for all involved. The flip side of that is, and I have to work on this, I get a bit grumpy when people don't have that same absolute, I think it's like a hardcore discipline. Not that much that comes out of radio is hardcore, but I think that's the flip side of the coin. Are you chill now, or are you still a little bit like that, having high expectations of others?
I do have expectations. That we all have a part to play, and I think for a lot of my career, like I've been doing comedy for 20 years, and I reckon there was a fair chunk in there, about 10 years of that, where I was asked to MC a lot, and I MC'd heaps, and I was happy to do it. A, because you got paid, and B, because I kind of enjoyed it. I know everyone wants to be the headliner. A lot of people would rather be the middle spot, the support spot, than the MC, because they're scared of warming up a room. I wasn't. I don't know. I was quite comfortable with it and loved doing it. And as an MC, you're kind of part of keeping that show on the rails and keeping it in time. And when you're the MC, you kind of like, all right, this guy is chewing into time. The headliner is going to be facing a very tired crowd if these people are dragged through this shit any longer. And alternatively, it's like, it's just, like I said, it's just selfish. I'm like, there's a whole show here and we're all part of a show. It's like watching the news and the sports guy decides he'll take up half the news,
Which is Australian media.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if he doesn't take up half the news, it's no good, is it? No.
On that though, with MCing, because there'd be people listening to this who've got in the back of their head they'd like it, or they are dead scared of ever taking the stage to be the MC, because we all know the MC, the night sits on the energy and the success that you bring. So many of us think, wow, hats off, that's the hardest gig in the world. But I just wonder, do you get a sense that the audience gets that too? And in some ways, they're a bit on your side because they know that you're the key to them having a good night too.
Yeah, I mean, punters don't always know that the compere or the MC or whatever you want to call it, depends on where in the world you are. They don't always realise that he's a comedian, because often after, like you might, like it's easy. I find it's pretty easy to smash it out of the park as an MC because you have such liberties of coming on and off and sniffing what's going on in the room and responding to it. You got a lot of to play with,
yep.
And you've got a lot of joy where you can go off, think about something, and go, oh, I should have said that, and you can go back on and say it. Where not many acts can do that. So it's a good thing, and the audience interaction is innate for an MC, and people love that stuff. I mean, they really do. So I think being an MC is a lot easier than people think it is. And and punters will come up to you after the show as an MC and go, "Oh, mate, you were better than all the comedians." And you're like, "Well, thanks, I think."
Yeah,
I
is
think.
that job well done or is that sabotage?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know whether to thank you or slap you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I take it. It's a good thing. They don't know how it works.
All right, I might put MCing on a bucket list then. I haven't done that yet, so we'll move that.
It makes you better. It makes you better at everything, I think.
Right, okay. There we go. Now, you're not the only Kennedy, though, who's in entertainment. You've got a teenage daughter. She's directing horror films. Your 10-year-old is an award-winning actor.
Well, I'm nominated, which is pretty impressive. Yeah, no, we are an acting family as well. My wife's an actor, and the kids sort of just walked along the path and followed us in. It certainly wasn't a toddlers and tiaras situation. It wasn't us pushing them in the door, saying, "Go on, do it." We were like, "Yeah, if you want to, you can. If you don't, don't." And my daughter loves it. She really, really enjoys it, and she's pretty darn good at it, actually, which is nice. So she's 12, actually. She's not quite a teenager, but
okay.
Yeah, and she's been writing and making little short films as well as acting in full-blown productions and so forth herself. And my son, 10-year-old, he also walked into it, and he was nominated for an actor award last year for a little role he had in Secret City, which was on Foxtel. So, yeah, which was pretty amazing when the youngest one in the house appears to be the most successful. So,
have you found yourself going to them for some advice?
Oh, advice? No, no. But sometimes they're good sounding boards. They ask questions a lot. They ask a lot of questions, and they say, "Dad, my son last night, he goes, Dad, do you call yourself a comedian?" And I didn't know if I was insulted or not when he said that. But I said, yes. I mean, it's what I identify as a comedian. And it's interesting because he sees me as dad at home most of the time. So he's, he doesn't see me on stage so much. So for him, it's kind of an unusual concept. He doesn't know what dad gets up to when he goes out at night. Is he like Batman? What happens? I mean, I don't know.
Now, look, I will affirm that you are a comedian. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Also, voiceover artist, we know that. I want to talk about that later too. But an author as well. And you've got a book, 9/11 and the Art of Happiness. It's about your mum who died on Flight 77 that was hijacked and flown into the Pentagon.
Yep.
Ironically, I was the one on news duties at 5DN in Adelaide when all of that horror happened, and it's why I left the media after that. But how's comedy helped with processing and dealing that personal aspect of the 9/11 tragedy?
Well, I guess
if it has.
Yeah. Well, on a broader scale, and weirdly enough, we were at a dinner party last night, and someone said, "How did you get into comedy? Why comedy?" And I basically described to them my childhood, and I lost my dad when I was about 9, so about my son's age, and I didn't mind goofing off at school, and I realised that if I made jokes or did funny impersonations of whoever was notable or whatever, I could elicit a very positive reaction. I could get a lot of fun happening, and it would basically be a diversion from people feeling pity for me, and I didn't enjoy that. I didn't like that kind of having the responsibility of wearing people's pity. And so I distract by making jokes. And then eventually people are like, "Oh, he's all right. He doesn't need our pity. He's so jovial and so funny." And then I think that just stuck with me there. And then when it came to losing Mum in 2001, I mean, I'd only been a comedian at that stage for a couple of years, if that. A couple of years, I suppose. And so it was hard. I mean, it was hard to get back on stage because the topic was omnipresent. The whole idea of what was going on in the world was very much in your face. And so I was doing my best at that stage to avoid reading news about it, just trying not to have it in front of me all the time because it was always with me, right? Yeah. So and then I started doing comedy, but I whether it was the right call or not, I kind of just pretended that didn't exist when it came to my comedy. I didn't talk about it.
Okay.
I didn't address it, and I think it's because I wasn't equipped to. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how it would. I didn't know how it would affect my comedy. But then I did start a few years later when I started getting a bit braver, maybe healing a bit more. I started talking about things that were very much related, like racism and things like that bothered me. So how did my comedy come into play with coping with it? Not really, but did that come into play with how my comedy transformed? Yeah, it did, I reckon.
Yeah, there's a prickly relationship with comedy because it's this elusive force that it has a one level in the realms of polite society where it leads to chuckles, but where comedy, I think, really becomes one of the most crucial things humans can do is the fact that it gets in deep when we are at our most repulsed or grief-stricken, and it's just got this two-edged sword, transformative power, but can also really divide people. So I suppose you would be the person more equipped to speak to that than many of us.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some pretty divisive stuff, and having such a close connection to the topic, the subject matter, I've seen things that I just feel really uneasy with. And I know that the audience, though, it's not my job to say what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. It's the audience who will ultimately decide that, and I respect that relationship with comedy that the audience has. And as right now, I mean, we're in a time where people call it the cancel culture, which it's part of a pendulum that's swinging, and the people are kind of like, well, it's too much, but then again, it's also like it's part of the process. It's back and forth. You're basically at one end you're doing blackface of comedy, that's that sort of thing, and at the other end, it's puritanical in a sense. It's so like let's tread so lightly that we say nothing. And I understand why it's swung. It'll swing back somewhere, and eventually it'll kind of rest in the middle, or it'll keep getting nudged side to side depending on what's happening in society. So I don't think anyone should be too scared about it. I mean, if I was Alan Jones on Sky News now, I'd be like, oh, it's political correctness gone too far. You can't say anything anymore. But I honestly think that's BS. I really think that's garbage. You can say whatever you want. You just have to wear the consequences of who's offended by it.
Yeah, well, actually, in the School of Hard Knock Knocks, we do a section on taboos because we've got to get our own philosophy right in approaching that. And probably one last thing to touch on that, of course, 3 months after 9/11, Ostentatious, on the same set as you, starts making some 9/11 jokes. I probably would have been tempted to deck him. I don't know. How did you react at the time?
Well, I was pretty fragile at that point. It was my first show back, so it was December 2001, I think, and I finally plucked up the courage to go back on stage again. And I mean, I guess I didn't know what to expect, but I mean, Sandy's he's an interesting one. He's I think it's fair to say he doesn't really. Well, if he doesn't care what anyone else thinks, or pretends he doesn't care. So he's pretty confrontational. That's what he does, and you can take it or leave it. I think history is kind of history's dictating, whether what he's doing is wanted or not. And I think you could look at his gig guide and know that it's probably gone out of fashion. He certainly leaves a lot of half-empty rooms, but he did put me in an interesting situation, as an awkward situation that night, because he actually said to me beforehand, he said, "Oh, look, I'm sorry about what happened to your mum," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, that's nice." And he goes, "I'm going to do some jokes about it." He goes, "What do you mind?" And I think I remember saying, "Look, I'd rather you didn't, though. I mean, I'm not really." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway, but whatever." So he did it all just before introducing me, and I was not really ready for that. And so, yeah, that. But it was a lesson. It was a lesson for me to go, well, you know what, you're going to hear things when you get back to work, when you get back to comedy clubs, you're going to hear things, and you're going to hear people making jokes. And I had to shore up within myself what I was okay with, what I felt about that. And I had to accept the fact that there would be people telling jokes that crossed the line for me.
Yep.
But that isn't like I say, it's not my job. It's not my job to vet that stuff.
In fact, in many ways, I mean, this is a poison word. That's a privilege that you've had because you've got that first-hand taste of empathy where we broadly talk about what's too far and what's not too far for an audience, and some people getting really upset, some people feigning it or virtue signalling their upsetness on behalf of others. But you've, in many ways, out of this, you probably have greater insight again on that. And has it changed the way you measure what's in and what's out? Because there is a lovely hypocrisy in comedy. The green room stuff can be dastardly, and even people there would never share it on stage. Just like police attending murder scenes have more humour, but they would never share it publicly because it's cleansing. And we live with this hypocrisy in the world, not just in the comedy scene. Any little Reddy Reckner thoughts for people in comedy about how they might come up with their own guidelines for what's in and what's out?
Yeah, look, I think empathy is something that I got in spades on the back of that. And I think, and I'm really grateful for it. I actually feel like, when someone says that joke is upsetting for me, even if I'm not, whether it be an Indigenous person who says that bothers me, I don't have a drop of Indigenous blood in me, but I make up for it, I think, in empathy. And I do understand. I'm like, okay, I think I can try and see it from their perspective now. I think I can maybe see how that feels. And even if I don't know how it feels, I think I need to understand that there is a feeling there that's happening, and I need to respect that. So if I do something, and even since 9/11, when I got back, I still might cross a line, unintentionally do a joke, and someone will come up to me afterwards and go, "Yeah, that made me feel bad. I didn't like that," and I'm have to, instead of saying, "Oh, fuck you, you're sensitive, you don't know what you're talking about. It's comedy, man." I say, "Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry. I now that I see it that way, I'll keep that in mind." So I kind of do, and it has changed the way I pick my targets, and if the whole cliche about punching down or punching up, that sort of thing.
Yep.
It's a cliche because it's true. You've got to, if someone's vulnerable, do they really need any more kicks? I mean, really? I mean, I think the higher the status, the funnier the joke when they take the fall. That's for sure. But then again, you're right about the green room hypocrisy, and I think it's an interesting one, because even with all the empathy I have, I can still, and I think it's often done ironically as well. Yeah. Like we want to get out this, let's do backstage what we know is wrong, and it almost signals to each other what is wrong.
Yeah.
And we're laughing out of discomfort. Like we're laughing because, oh my God, that is the worst thing you can say. That is so bad. And it's not because we're joking about it like that because we want to make fun of people or certain people. We're doing it because we know it's the wrongest thing to do. It's completely self-aware, I think. And you do these things backstage. Like you say, policemen or funeral directors would all have these horrendous jokes that they do in their own company with each other within the context of that. And it's kind of a way of saying, let's get this out of our system because we know how bad it is,
Yep.
And whether that's the right thing to do, I don't know, but it is human nature. And I know friends who would make all sorts of jokes, to me in private as a kind of like, how wrong is that? But they would be devastated if they hurt someone's feelings with that. It's a hypocrisy of sorts. Yeah, it is. But I also understand why it happens.
It's almost like we can have nuance and maturity in our small groups, and that doesn't translate to the public group. We become more brittle and childlike, not able to understand we're being ironic and have to take the high moral ground.
Yeah. I mean, look, put it this way. I mean, it depends on what you're talking about or who you're talking about as to how it might be perceived. So, for instance, if you were making an ironic joke about Black Lives Matter or something like that, which is a super sensitive topic, and rightly so. I mean, there's a lot of dark history going on there, a lot of horrible stuff. So if you made an ironic joke about that, being a massive supporter of the cause and being a massive supporter of the community and wanting better for the community, and made an ironic joke because you know it's ironic and it's wrong, it's whatever, it would be frowned upon, And I think that's fair enough. It is fair enough. But there is a weirdness. For instance, if someone said, "Oh, I got a bunch of kittens here," I'm not sure what to do with them all. And if someone said, "Oh, put them in a bag and drown them," people wouldn't be like, "Oh my God," like, "Oh, you can't. Oh my God, you can't say that." They go, "Ah, you idiot. That's stupid." Like it's because I guess there's context.
There are levels. I mean, there's a line in the sand because only Alan Jones can make that, and only in relation to female prime ministers.
Yes.
Comment, yes.
Yeah. That's right.
Just pausing the podcast for a moment because I need to tell you something. If you're feeling like a cup of tea, we'd like to recommend So Not Hippie. In fact, we should have got you to drink one before the interview started. But So Not Hippie is for everyone, as are their delicious organic quality teas. Like that. The finest ethically sourced black and herbal teas you'll find with a heap of fun chucked in for good measure. So Not Hippie teas also make perfect gifts, and if you can't work out which tea is the bee's knees for your beloved or your friend or colleague, whoever it might be, it's none of our business, they offer gift cards, so it's all sorted for you. So Not Hippie. Just because they're healthy doesn't mean they're hippie. Get yours now at www.sonothippie.com. That's hippie spelt with an I-E. Now we'll hip-hoppy back to the podcast. Rounding off this, though, one final summary thought. Too much empathy, does that kill the ability to be funny, or does it just raise the bar and make you work harder to find the comedy?
Yeah, I think it can make you a little bit gun shy on stage.
Yep.
It can do, but that's probably when you're going through a transitional change with your material. That's when you're like when you're still working out what you can do and what you should do. So there's a little bit of second guessing yourself, and that's not great for comedians. But on the other hand, I think it does raise the bar. I really do. And when I see comedians on Facebook or Twitter or what anyone says, you can't say anything anymore. Oh, you can't say anything without someone getting offended. Or you can. I'm like, you're just clearly not a good enough writer. If you can't adapt your material from Chinese people can't drive, then you're really not trying very hard. Like you're not much of a writer. Like honestly, that's how I feel, because there's a lot of comics. Excuse me. There's a lot of comics who are still getting by on that sort of gear, that sort of like all those horrible tropes, like Chinese people cook dogs and stuff. It's like, come off it, really? Like really? You still like that's the kind of lame ass crap that someone's uncle would have said at a barbecue. Like it's not even pushing the envelope of what clever writing is. It's not even close. So I think that those comics will just get weeded out in the end. They'll find themselves unable to keep up with society. And look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I was like 25 when I kicked off. So let's not talk about how old I am now. But when I started, and I was doing crap. Like the jokes I did it just showed the kind of two-dimensional young man that I was. There was nothing much in there. There is not one joke from my first sort of 6 months to a year that exists in my set now. I mean, because because it's dated, it's garbage. It's and there are even jokes that I do and I've done over the past that I'm rethinking right now. Like I have a whole routine which I do about outsourcing my incoming phone calls from my wife, who calls often, to an Indian call center. And it's just more or less the idea of getting someone else to do that. Someone to take the brunt of that for me. But there's also, within that context of that joke, there's this sort of assumption and presumption that if it's a call center that's going to be probably in India or something like that, and is that where I should be right now? So there was never an ill intent within the joke. There was never a racist undertone of that they're less than us or anything like that. It was more based on a typicality that most call centers were based in Mumbai, something like that. But I have to always be aware of the fact that how it's perceived. And I've got to always be willing to change and adapt and drop something, even if it gets good laughs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as we've been talking, I don't know if it's come through on the recording, but I've been pinged by some call centre calls that are coming into my system and I can't find out where to stop the notification. So this is art.
There you go. That's right.
Yes.
Well, that's true. I mean, maybe someone suggested to me, why don't you just change it to Filipinos because they're all Filipino. I'm like, so I don't think that's kind of the point.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, look, you come across as a very optimistic person, but also adaptive. And when lockdown hit, you moved from stage to screen using Zoom, which is what we're using now.
Yeah.
You got a lot of earned media for that on TV. Channel 7, you spice up your Zoom. How did the idea come about, and how different are you finding Zoom from the live environment?
It's not
face-to-face environment.
Yeah, look, it's not the same at all. Hello, there's my daughter coming in. I'm doing an interview. Okay. See you later. That's my 12-year-old.
Actually, we really did want to interview her instead, but we figured we had to interview you first before.
She's too expensive.
Okay.
Too expensive. So where were we? Zoom. Yeah. And it came about because one of the dads from school, he works with IT startups and that sort of thing. And as soon as lockdown happened, I think I put a post up, something along the lines. I said that I've just had 12 gigs cancelled in a day, so this is not looking good. And he just messaged me saying, what about doing stuff on Zoom? So he came to me and said, what about that? And before I'd even considered it. And my first reaction was, oh, no way. Like, that just won't work. You can't do stand-up comedy without an audience. And I have seen some attempts on, what was it? I'm not sure. A few comics did this thing. I was on Stan or Amazon. I can't remember what it was on.
I'm happy for you not to name names, just so we don't get sued. But
no. And I kind of I admire the attempt.
Yeah.
But it was flat. There was no audience, and it was kind of like it misses the point of what the comedy relationship is, and it's a bit of a back and forth. It's not just someone doing a monologue. That's not really what stand-up is. And I think that showed through in those sort of attempts. So I was sort of very much of the mind of I'm not going to do that. It doesn't work. That's not how it would work. It's a new medium. It has to be treated as a new medium. And I think because I've done radio, I've done TV, and I've done live on stage. And none of those three things are the same. And I don't do the same thing when I'm doing either three of those mediums. So this one, why would I do the same thing as some or the other? So for me, it was a new invention. So I treated it more like, I guess more like a little TV show / radio show. So basically having all the audience on mute, however many there were. I'm not sure how many the biggest one I've had was, because you can't have all this noise going on,
No.
So you need to be the only focus point. So I did that and mucked around with the virtual backgrounds as some visual gags there. And then I would, I'd unmute people and talk to them and have some fun. And I think it was sort of, talk about adaptive. I was adapting skills from radio, talking to callers, and that sort of thing, adapting some of my stand-up material to a different sort of format as well. There was a bunch of things that I changed up, and it was literally a new format. So and that's why it worked. It did go well for a while, and I'd say it's a bit quieter now because people are going back to work, so they've got life. Unfortunately, who knows? Maybe I'll have some gigs out of Victoria again now, but I don't know. But
yes. Well, actually, on that, I mean, you mentioned on Sunrise that you thought this medium has legs after COVID-19. Are you a little bit more circumspect about that now? You think once it's getting us through, but it's not going to ever really be satisfying? It's like junk food versus a proper meal?
Well, it remains to be seen. It does remain to be seen. There are still, I'm still getting inquiries and work coming through. But obviously that's more for companies where people are mostly now still working from home. Places where there's a bit of, teams coming back together, they won't need it so much because they're face-to-face, and that's a morale thing they've got there. But no, I would still say that it will happen in a smaller context. I mean, not everyone will be online forever.
Sure.
But I think that we'll still see some, and we are still, getting inquiries, still getting bookings. So we'll see how we go. I mean, I have to be honest. I don't love it as much as getting up in front of a crowd. But that's that's just that electricity you get with an audience. But I've had a lot of fun with it, and some of them I just walk away from going, that was great. That was really fun, and I didn't even have to put pants on. It's wonderful.
Yes. Well, look, we're just about to wind up this chat. Podcasting is in your future through a show called Historically Inaccurate. It sounds like a mashup of current historical events. Is there a dollop in it, or what's the idea behind this new venture?
Oh, look, it's just something that I thought of, and from my background working with Nova as well. I was with Nova for about 7 years, and I was creating content for them. And I would often repurpose interviews and things like that, cut them up, change the questions, make people say things they didn't say. And it was a lot of fun. And also like doing character work and doing, that sort of thing from hosting a show on Nova as well. So doing character calls where I'd bring in as whoever. And so basically the idea is I'm going to take historical events and repurpose them. So, whether it be that Donald Trump created the Great Wall of China.
Gotcha.
That's and commit to the lie, by the way, just like Donald Trump would do.
Yep. Double down on the lie and say, I did it. I created the Great Wall. It's a beautiful wall. It's a beautiful thing. It's so good. So that's kind of the idea of it, and having a bit of fun with it. So, and it'll be a limited series, but it's something that I got a bee in my bonnet. I thought, let's do this. So it's underway. Well, I do love some of the revoiced videos on your YouTube channel too. The Pete Evans My Conspiracy Rules is excellent, and redoing that. And I think you've got this stitched as a feature video. The Department of Finance video, the revoiced as just gold. So that you're obviously, I just love the way that you find creative ways to put your creativity out there.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's funny that Department of Finance video that came out. It was such a, if everyone remembers, it was such a lame kind of corporate video that they put together, and I just revoiced it, changed everyone's voices, and it kind of went pretty well. It was one of my most popular.
I think the original video was watched by 7 people. Yours has been watched by 52,741 at this point.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's not JoJo Siwa levels of popularity, but it's not bad for an afternoon's work.
And look, my very last question: the voice, the ability to imitate and mimic. If someone's thinking they'd like to incorporate some of that into their work, is that something you've either got or you haven't? Or has there been a definite sort of training system that you've used to hone that skill?
It's something that I kind of taught myself to do when I was a kid, really. So when I was little, I don't know why I started doing it, but I loved listening to cartoon voices, watching cartoons. And then I'd come to school and I'd be doing all the suffer and succotash. It's like, yeah, what's up, Doc? And I'd be doing all of the, rascally rabbit or whatever I'm doing. And all the other kids were like, oh, my God, that's just like the cartoon. So I would keep trying to do new voices. And all the way through, I never stopped trying to do it. On stage, I don't tend to do a lot of impersonations.
Yep.
I do kind of characters act out, so that if I'm talking about an old man that I met in Bunnings, I'll talk about him, but I'll give him a bloody voice as well. So for me, it's part of injecting character into a story and creating that world. So the only one I've really pushed as far as impersonations on stage was kind of Donald Trump for a while there, because I think everyone wanted it. But now I can tell you right now, nobody wants to hear that anymore. No, it's not funny. It's very bad. No one's interested. I'm stopping it, because there's no joke I can write that's more batshit crazy than the stuff he says. So.
And interestingly, that just struck me that empathy is really in the DNA of your comedy, because whether it is from the history we talked about or whether it is doing voices, you've got to have some deep connection with that character to bring it out. So I think there's a lot for us to reflect on from this chat. Really appreciate it. This will be cherished by many people, and hopefully give rise to lots of competition for you from other people who you've even. You know what?
The more competition, the better. I love to see comics upping their game, and when I work with young comics who I see doing something that's impressive, I'm like, wow, okay, I need to work harder. This is that guy's good. Okay, I've lost the jealousy now, and now I just look at it and go, okay. Wow. All right. Let's dig in. This kid's hot. Better work a bit harder.
And gigs, seeing you, assuming some appear, and what's the best way to contact you?
Oh, look, just go straight to simonkennedy.com and you'll find me, or my YouTube is all. That'll get you to everything, really. Simon Kennedy. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm not much of an influencer, but I'm everywhere, omnipresent. Not TikTok, because I'm afraid of the Chinese getting my data.
Exactly, or more of it. Simon Kennedy, thanks for being on the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Dave, an absolute pleasure, mate.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.